We now move on to our second session, which is a panel discussion titled Trend in the Product Ecosystem. On the panel are Mr. Chandrashekar, Senior Vice President at InMobi. Can I please request you to come and take your seat? Apoorva Pandey, Director at Sears Holding, Specialist in Product Management. Mr. Romil, Turakhia, Executive Director at Candela Labs. And the panel will be moderated by Mr. Satish RM, Product Strategy at ROHM.
Oh, you have one. Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yeah. So, good afternoon and welcome to this second session for the day. We'd like to, you've got a distinguished member in the panel here. So we will start by, so before we start, so I just wanted to tell you that I was in the same position where you people were about 2 years ago. Okay, end of 2016 is when I was going through a similar session of this sort, and I signed up for my executive MBA in 2017, and I completed it just a few months ago. So what we will do in this session to start off with is to understand the industry trends that each of the distinguished members in the panel are seeing in their specific industries, and what are those challenges they see in terms of being able to adapt to those changes because of those trends that they're seeing. And we will start with maybe Romil.
Candela Labs, that's the company that I'm with. We provide products to insurance companies and banks. And the trends we're seeing in the product space for insurance companies and banks, we're seeing two big trends. One is insurance companies and banks are shunning monolith kind of products. So smaller products, more products, suite of products is what they are acquiring, rather than being wedded to like one big platform, what we used to see earlier in the ERP days. So that's one trend we're seeing. And the other trend that we're seeing is each of them starting their own innovation labs. So in a way, they have product managers, we have product managers when we give our products in, and it's sort of co-opetition, collaboration and competition kind of thing. So those are the two big trends we're seeing.
So I work with Sears Holdings. It's a retail chain, and we have many products in different sectors. So what we have been seeing evolving is how data science is playing a bigger role. Though we see we have a lot of data, but even having a data and using a data in a right way, and with offline and online, how do you take care of the data and how the members are engaging with you, and then using that data in a right format for personalization and all other needs is the biggest trend, and where we are moving and all other retail players are moving that we see.
I work at InMobi. We are in the marketing and advertising space. I will break it up into two parts. The first one is the macro forces impacting advertising and marketing, and second, the implications of that on product and my larger role. The first larger macro trend is changing consumer behavior. For example, there used to be a time when ad copy was something that people would obsess about, marketers, advertisers. They would read the newspaper, they would read the entire ad. I haven't seen or read an ad copy in the last donkey's years, like 10 years or so. So consumer behavior, the fact that earlier you could engage a customer, generate awareness, create some sort of an emotional connect with the product, versus the fact that we are distracted, we check our phone screens possibly 150 times. In a typical day, you're seeing roughly 500, 600 brands in a day passively. You're walking by a billboard, that's a brand connect. What used to work for my mom doesn't work for me in terms of marketing. So that's a larger consumer behavior change. The fact that digital as a percentage of total advertising and marketing spends is growing, which means that you're generating copious amounts of data, to what Apoorva hinted, that there's no dearth of data. The third one is the fact that all of this data is getting congregated in a few large silos, right? For example, Facebook, Google, possibly Amazon, you can add to that mix. Different story in China, but similar structures, right? Baidu, Alibaba, Tencent have a bulk of the data. And marketers need data to be more effective. But all of that data is sitting in walled gardens. Besides this walled gardens, there's also the challenge of privacy. I wouldn't say challenge. All of us as consumers want that privacy. But it is also a fact that all of us are rows in a Cassandra database somewhere with a profile attached to it. If you think of these three as broad sectoral forces impacting marketing and advertising, you could think of the product implications as being, how do you make data the primary citizen in your product decision frameworks, right? How do you build products around data? How do you build products around machine learning baked on top of that data? The second thing is you need to kind of, at least in advertising and marketing, on smaller screens, right? In a video or in a television, you could build a great commercial. On newspaper, you could write a great copy. But on a small mobile screen, you need to kind of evoke the same kind of emotion. So digital design, creative is another aspect that's kind of impacting at least the product management function in advertising and marketing.
So thanks, Chandra. So the thing is, I think we got some good insights from different industries. One from Chandra, and the other one is the commerce from Apoorva, and also the insurance. So I would like to just give you another perspective in terms of just trying to consolidate everything that they said. The other thing that you're seeing when it comes to, so I come from a semiconductor company. It's a Japanese semiconductor company, and we are into making ICs specific to India, for the India market, focusing on, say, emission regulations, which is something that's happening in 2020. You're going to have stage 6 emissions across all vehicle segments, including two-wheelers. And we also are aware of a lot of hype and buzz on the migration to EV ecosystem and adoption of electric vehicle things. So that is exactly what we are working on. And one of the things, and all of what our members said in the panel are also applicable even for a kind of landscape that we work in, which is more of physical. And going forward, when you have vehicles connected to you have connected vehicles, so you actually have a convergence of the digital and the physical space. So the key points here that I would say would be something as a takeaway for you is, at least from when we look at it from the perspective of our industry, is that the demography of India is changing so fast. Okay, so you have, like, by 2025, India will have the highest working population. It would have beaten China by a big way in the next 10 years. When you see from 2015 to 25, the working population, and then to that you add the youth. Okay, the percentage of the youth in that working population is again higher, so which means that there is a market, there is a demand for all kinds of products. And India being a kind of diverse culture that we are, so there's so much scope for product leaders and in fact thought leaders to come out with products that are specific to India. And that's exactly what we are trying to do. Because though there exists automotive industry across the globe for four-wheeler segment, what you would observe if you look at it carefully, a two-wheeler as a segment within automotive is something that is, India is now the largest market. Okay, it's not China. I mean, China, if you just take the traditional IC petrol engines, so China is already way ahead in EV, and because of their GDP per capita, their affordability is also increasing. So which means that going forward, India is going to be the hub for two-wheelers. Okay, so China populace would start buying more of four-wheelers, and once you see ride sharing and all that. So the point here is there is so much of demand. And the products that were made, at least in our world, the physical world, that were made for the developed economies don't fit into the scheme of things here. Because Indian customers always, I would say, demands the highest value by cost ratio. So which means that he will pay for value, but he at the same time, he's also sensitive to the cost. So all of the challenges, what they said, is something that we are also seeing. We are seeing that there is a need for us to innovate out of India. So as what Romil mentioned, so there's a lot of now the even the Indian operations are getting geared up to the point of focus to be on innovation. And as Chandra summed it up, data-driven decision making is a very key, and also the design, because at the end of the day, I think the user experience is what matters. So I think that is a good summary of thing to start off this panel discussion. So the next thing that I would want our members in the panel to throw some light on is how product managers within their organizations are actually kind of gearing up to align with this, which I mean is whatever the rising challenges that they see because of those rapid changes, how are they actually addressing them? The changes that we see. Maybe we could start with Chandra.
I think it might be a very vague meta answer, if I may. Apologies for that. I think if you have enough intellectual curiosity and you are hungry and insecure about how you might get disintermediated or why your product might just become irrelevant overnight, if you operate with that paranoia, then it's perfectly fine. I mean, so for example, if you hire for those skills, you hire intellectually smart people, hungry people, insecure people, ambitious but insecure people, and if they run, then you invariably cover up for any market forces that might at play. And because they are ambitious or intrinsically driven, even if the contours change, right? For example, you're working on this $1 million deal, the customer eventually realizes, compares you to a value-based company and stuff like that, and you lose that deal, you still have the hunger and the fight to be able to improve your product. So it's a very meta answer. It's not what you would give as a politically correct answer, but coming from a practitioner, take it for what it's worth. Intellectual curiosity, intrinsic motivation, and when these two are there, most product challenges are manageable.
Right. So, Apoorva.
So I would agree with what Chandra said. I mean, products normally have a very long journey, and there are times where it takes a lot of time to come out, and as the market evolves, the customer requirement changes, your product has also to, your customer base changes, or if in the case of business, B2B, your business customer changes. So you have to evolve. And also there are times where if your product is not meeting a requirement, you have to also accept a failure and move ahead. So you need to be curious, you need to be hungry to move ahead. And you have to be evolving every day. And as a product manager, you have to work with a lot of group of people, and also to hold different caps at different moments. You're working with engineering things, so you need to work with them, understand them. You have to also look at from the customer perspective, have empathy regarding them, what they want, what they look for, and then also you have to work with your executives and communicate to all of them. So, and also communication has a very key role. You may feel that okay, why should that matter a lot? But it is that communication. It's kind of you are communicating to all the people. As if there's any miss in that communication, your product will be very different from what you expected.
Thank you.
In one word, actually, what we are seeing is we at least are demanding of our product managers a more and more entrepreneurial, nature in people. So, in one word, if you were like an entrepreneur where you're willing to try many things, but you own everything completely, all aspects, whether it's like Apoorva said, communication, whether it's hunger to fight back and win in situations where you think you may not have won, whatever you see, but starting from conceptualization, day one product management as it's known, through to communication, through to features, through to where the checkbox should be, and the box, is it better if the button is on the right or the left? All the way from that, conceptualization down to this are the skills that we are looking at, including commercial, absolute commercial savviness, if you will. So, one of the big things that I keep telling our product managers that we hire is that you've got to be able to understand how to factor your zoom lens. You zoom in for certain things, zoom out for certain things, but you'll have to be able to do both fairly quickly and apply them in an entrepreneurial manner.
Yeah, thank you. So I think those are some really great insights in terms of what is needed to be able to manage this fast forward or rapid changes that you see in the ecosystem. So one of the things that you would actually realize from, if you look at the pattern in what each one of them said, is that as you move towards digital transformation, right? So the thing is, there's also higher the risk is. I mean, it's like you are allowing more companies to come and be able to disrupt you. Okay, so that it becomes that much more easier because it's all connected now in terms of if you have the right view, as Romil was saying, okay? As a product manager, if you can actually be able to analyze those market forces what Chandra was mentioning. So I think it takes you, as a product manager, it takes you more than what you would need from the journey that you may have had till now in terms of managing functional competencies, where you are more executing the kind of thoughts that the product manager breaks it down and says that this is what is required to be executed. So when you move towards being able to manage products or do product management, it takes more than that in terms of being able to have an overall view of the market and then the industry forces that are influencing it. Okay, and how that will affect your financial metrics for the company, because I think that is something that a product manager actually keeps in mind, along with trying to bring value into his product or his offerings, which is something, as Chandra was mentioning, if there are forces which are actually disrupting you, you are up to that game because you are focusing on value centric, and I would say rather when the kind of traits that Chandra was mentioning, it is innovation focused. Okay, so if you are able to innovate and focus on that innovation to bring value to your customers, you are up for the game. I mean, maybe it's like you lose one battle, but you are ready for your next battle is what I would look at. And the other thing that we at least have figured out as product managers is, one is innovation, the other one is branding. So you should also be able to, as Apoorva was saying, communication, right? So and there is this famous saying from Peter Drucker which says that everything else is cost except innovation and branding for your product. So that is, I would say, in a nutshell, is what a product manager's role is to focus on these two aspects and deliver or build it into the products and deliver it to the customer. So I think that would be two key things to or two keywords for takeaways, like innovation, value centric innovation, and then the branding of it. So maybe Chandra, I would like you to highlight maybe some experiences from your journey in terms of where you found yourself or your product managers having a gap in being able to manage this, and then how you worked around it or built the capability to be able to, if at all there was such situations that you have come across, where, because the industry is continuously evolving, the forces are changing. So is there a change in the kind of capabilities, like the data science thing, as you mentioned, that's one of them. So some live examples which the audience could connect with in terms of how did you identify the gap in the first place? Was it too late in identifying those kind of instances? So what corrective actions you put in improving the way your product management competency responds to this? Some live examples would be very helpful for the audience to connect with.
Sure. I can cite two examples. The first instance was of us building an advertising stack for the performance business. To draw parallels, think of it like Google's business, right? Google's advertising business, extremely performance driven. You need quant geeks in the team. I mean, most product managers need to be comfortable with data, but you see the drift, right? You need absolutely people who are comfortable with optimization, data science, and stuff like that. So we didn't have the right mix of people. We tried to retool, reskill. They were great product managers, don't get me wrong. For most parts, we get our hiring right. They were great product managers, but we were trying to put a square peg on a round hole. They weren't really the people who we thought could upskill themselves, get comfortable with machine learning. The expectation is not that they would become data science experts, but the expectation was at least that they could understand what data scientists were doing, possibly run a few Python scripts themselves and stuff like that. And there was day and night difference when over a period of 6 months we kind of transitioned a few people out into other teams and got in place those quant geeks. and you need to cherish them, right? I mean, one or two of these guys can be the difference between pulling in 10 million or 20 million versus pulling in 200 million. So that is definitely one example where you got someone who was an MBA by mistake. This was essentially an IT engineer, brilliant guy, wickedly sharp, extremely uncomfortable that he had gone to B school. So we kind of reskilled him, had him focus purely on data science. And there was one instance where I think we changing the kinds of people who work on the certain classes of problems has a very material impact. And everyone is happy, right? You take a person who's not comfortable with data science, scripting, Python, and you put him on that, he's going to suffocate. You put that data science, extremely analytical guy on aesthetics and design and stuff like that, he's going to suffocate. So that's a lesson we learned a bit the hard way. We did blow up 6 months to 12 months in release velocity. The second example of that, or the parallel of that, is what Microsoft, for example, to draw parallels, right? Microsoft has a very clear distinction between people who do more business-facing, outward in product management versus who are building platforms. Your Azure or AWS product manager or head of products is a completely different beast from, say, if I had to pick, Sears, Sears.com product manager, right? Person who's deciding what the checkout flow should be, what the category pages should be and stuff like that. Completely chalk and cheese. We again had a lot of learning where we put a traditional consumer PM onto platform, and they took 6 months to surface above water. It wasn't the most smoothest journey, and then that's when we realized the importance of getting traditional platform mindset product managers to kind of focus on the right class of problems and have the appropriate product managers focus on their class of problems, which would be consumer footprints and so on and so forth.
Thank you. So, just some thoughts from you as well, Apoorva.
Yeah, I would say we also went through a similar kind of journey. In the start of 2018, we felt that as data science was picking up, we had to evolve all the decision making and also how marketing and all other channels based on the data science. So we had to reskill some of the team members. Then we thought that it's better to reskill the people and we also reach out to the universities to see what kind of talent they have, but they don't have a lot of practical knowledge. So to have both of them in place, we went for reskilling our own team members and then also getting some people from the industry and also from the universities. That was one thing. And in the process, we also found out that yes, we now want to do using data science, but there are places where we didn't capture the data. So if you don't have a data, though if you now want to do data science, you cannot do because you're already late. You don't know what happened, why that happened. I can give you a simple example. We ran one campaign with 100,000 people, and we saw that there were around 300,000, around 30,000 people who started shopping with us after a year time, and we thought that was a result of our campaign. But when we just took any random set, we found that every random set, there were 30% people who were shopping with us again. So that doesn't tell you whether did you take all the right data set when you started with. And I would say that helped us to, we understood from that, we started capturing as more information in all the different flows in all different places. The other I would say is from a product perspective is when we started developing one of our product, which was B2B and B2C, we initially didn't have the right understanding what was the customer set. Unless you have a right understanding of customer set, you may go and design or build something and your customers are very different. Where we went and built an app where I would say 80% of customers didn't even have a smartphone. Then you don't need, or you need to have a way where you train them or you bring them. So you need to take care of that part as well, to onboard them to a smartphone, to have them start using it and take care of all those things. And these are the two experiences.
Thanks. Yeah.
We had one big learning, just recent, it's just fresh, so that's the one that I think I should just share. the definition of product manager in different people's minds is what we realized is the big gap. When we had a few product managers come in, some of them threw their lot, and we all know that. I see you have the that circle bit with you, that the printout, and there are so many areas, 6, 7, 8 areas, depending on which framework you follow. But some people threw their lot with the marketing and outward communication side. Some people threw their lot with just the execution side, and I think wrongly placing some people in the wrong with the wrong strengths in the wrong. It's like what Chandra said was about it's almost akin to that, but consumer facing versus was not really the challenge we had. For us, it's always B2B, so similar types of products. But what we quickly learned is we need to pair up product to get someone with all the capabilities and expertise and passion in all those areas in that circle is going to be difficult. So we started pairing up product managers as those who have what is traditionally known as product owner kind of skills, who flesh out the user stories, who then make sure that the UX works well, and then get that executed, and engineering then gets it done. That's one set of mind bend. And the other is, how do I reach out to more customers? What's the right communication? What's the value prop, etc. And of course, one drives the other in both ways. So just placing the right product managers in the right place took some time for us, and that's the big learning that we had.
Thank you. So I would try to. I'll just try to kind of put perspective to whatever our members said on the panel. So typically what happens is every individual actually goes through a cycle. Like you have product life cycle, you have customer life cycle management. I think even for talent, every individual goes through a cycle, which is what was one of the things that we tried to do in the projects that we executed in IPL, was that we saw that, and that holds good for the organizations as well. So individuals go through a functional leadership kind of a phase, and then they go through a product leadership kind of a phase, and then they go through a thought leadership kind of a phase. And this is typically also aligns with the phase at which the organization that they're working for is in. Okay, so if the organization is in a startup phase, so the kind of so the needs are different. The marketing needs for those organizations are also different. So again, depends on where the individual is coming from. Okay, is it from a startup kind of an environment, or is it a small and medium scale businesses where you would see that you will have more of that product leadership skill, and then there are big names. Okay, you have these the live ups. So we called it the startups, the scale ups, and the live ups. We are actually living up to the brand. They already built a brand for themselves. So there you will typically have more of thought leaders, because the quantum of work that you have. So it doesn't mean to say that you don't need thought leaders and product leaders in a startup. What I'm saying is you will still need those to be able to execute those projects in the startup, but you will need few of them because the magnitude of the work there is lower. So this is something that we saw, the kind of people from where they come from different organizations. So if you are in those organizations and you are moved up to a point within those organizations, then you tend to have more such people, is what is the observation that we had. And it's not easy, because at least in the embedded or the physical space where I come from, most of the work, and I'm not sure if I can say the same thing for the digital world or the kind of development that happened there, but at least in the physical world, a lot of the work, which is the value centric innovation part, was always done where the market was, which is the developed economies, because that is where you can focus on what value you can bring to the customer or your user in terms of user experience and all that. And I think it's been like almost 15 years, I would say, starting from 2000 to 2015. But I'm not the right person to say the same thing for the industries that the members come from. But at least what I have observed is those 15 years, we've been able to build up functional competencies. Okay, so there was someone who would actually break down the requirements in terms of what is the value and how do you break it down and then get it done outside of their region. for several reasons, for cost arbitration and whatever it is. So that is where I see that you have the functional domain expertise, but you need to add those skills that we're talking about, which is going to move you into a product management or a product leader. And those are very critical, because what happens when you're working on a functional domain thing, you ideally need interfaces. From one functional to the other functional, you actually need interfaces. And that is what I think when I looked at it from the perspective of when this digital IoT started to happen, when you were starting to connect the physical world with the digital, there were enough people who had worked on the digital domain, and there were enough people who had worked on the physical domain. There was none that you could find who could be an interface between the both. That was the biggest challenge, and a lot of IoT projects, what you see there is, it starts off like that, and because you're not able to interface and show the business outcome, you struggle to show the ROI. So I think product management capabilities or skills that we're talking about is actually trying to build those interfaces. Either you come from the digital domain, you start thinking in terms of product. It's not just that function that you're talking about. When you start thinking in terms of product, then it becomes a need for you to actually interface with the other functional domain, and it could go all the way up to between digital and physical. So the other aspect of it is you have people who are good in the industry, like you could say industry vertical. So if you have worked like customer facing, or you're kind of handling the value chain, all from the downstream to the upstream. So that's more of an industry vertical skill that you build, and then you have a horizontal skill as well. So typically you map it as a T skill. So that means you're deep in one vertical and across. So generally what you see is most of us are like a T skilled thing. I think the world is moving towards a pie, because a pie skill is where you have knowledge of two industries, because the digital transformation that is happening so fast, and it's all I think originated by the mobile in our hands, right? So there are a lot of things that converge into your mobile. So at least mobile phone is the one becomes like a pivot, and there can be multiple industries. Say it could be healthcare or your auto getting connected. So just imagine if you could be able to collect data about a person when he is driving. So that's like you actually brought in two industries now. Okay, so that's the kind of skills that you will need going forward to come out of those disruptive killer applications. Someone who's got the knowledge of automotive, someone's got the knowledge of say healthcare or entertainment, for example, where things start to converge very, very fast. And anyone who can be able to do that would really add value. So it's more like a dynamic capability of the skills that you look for. And I would say product management just sets you up for that, for the future. If that summary, if you want to add anything specific to.
Not much here. I pretty much agree with what you're saying.
Okay, yeah.
I agree.
So Chandra, I just want to now look at the ecosystem part of it. So if you want to deliver value into your products and take it to market, how much do you see the need for actually having an ecosystem approach with partners or with specific alliances? It could be either on the product innovation side, or it could also be on the go-to-market side.
We couldn't agree more. Just for some context, at InMobi we did a very global partnership with Microsoft, and the fundamental premise was what you had articulated, saying that with our resources we can only do this much. We're fairly successful, decent set of resources, but still we're talking about Microsoft. I can't re-emphasize the importance of having an ecosystem play, having the ability to have other sellers and possibly other partners who can take your product to the market. Literally, there is two partnerships that are public. So Microsoft is one of them. There are at least 6 other partnerships that we're working on. Purely because we realize to be able to give that momentum to the product, you need to sandbox it, have a clear value proposition, and then put it in as many hands as you can. From a product integration perspective also, we pivoted the company from being purely an advertising company to being an advertising as well as MarTech company, AdTech and MarTech. In MarTech, you do need to plumb with whatever tools the enterprise marketer is using, right? So if you are Coke, and you have like a 1500 people marketing team, you will use n number of tools. Now you have to play well with those tools because you have no way of opening that deal without integrating with their tools. So I would say both on the GTM motion as well as on the product development motion, you have to go where the customer is on the product side, and you have to take your product through the channels to where the customer is on the GTM side.
So yes, partnership plays a critical role both in the innovation side and also in going to the market. So for the innovation side, we went to the universities, did the partnerships with the universities so that we can work with them and with their help bring the innovations to our product and also to help us to accelerate our development cycle. And then on the market side, we did some exclusive partnerships with some of the big players in the US market, which helped us to reach out to large customers quickly and also to build the product and also support multiple verticals, which would have been very difficult unless we had those partnerships in place.
Yeah, the importance of partnerships, of course, is a no-brainer. All of us, I heard everyone say that. I'll emphasize that once again. I think the days of having everything built, starting from, so the partnerships, of course, are at various stages. Those who help you build stuff or those who have pieces that you may not have, starting from there to communications, to sales, to channels, to including business partnerships where there's funding, etc. So partnership, without that, of course, you can't move ahead. I think if anyone believes that if it's not invented here, it's not good enough, I think is living in a false world. We have seen practically over the last 1 year, at least 4 tech partnerships, which is very rare in terms of imbibing components from other people who develop other components into our product set and selling that, including deep level relationships like code sharing, etc. And fairly positive results on that, because what you see is your partners thinking of how to make only that one component better and better, which gives you accretive or multiplicative effects for your overall product. So I think you can never overstate the importance of that.
Your point well taken. So one of the things that you can actually draw as a pattern here is it's when we talk about agile, it's mostly that we are again focusing on those functional aspects of the agile within the team. But what we just now heard in terms of ecosystem play, right? It's actually agile by co-creation. I mean, you're going into the next level where you are being agile and being able to co-create, which makes it add more value and at the same time be faster to market. And that's something that I think will always, I think going forward, that's you're going to see many more. I think already people are there, but many more companies will start doing this just because there's no other way you can keep up with the competition in terms of. So I think we should move from just thinking agile to being agile by co-creation, and that is why I brought in this question of the ecosystem play. And from here I would just go to the last phase of what I wanted to bring out. Is I think we heard that it is important for a product manager to have those capabilities and skills on the, say, the technology or the functional competencies that we're talking about. At the same time, you saw that there's a lot of interactions with the internal stakeholders within the company and say within the ecosystem, which means that cross company. Okay, so which means there is something more that a product manager needs to gain in terms of taking him to the next level, which is like product leadership. So I would just want the members to throw some light on the other skills that you're looking for in terms of maybe leadership, change. I mean, what are those things that you see as critical in all the scheme of things? Interactions internal, as well as the ecosystem partners. Maybe list top 3 quickly.
Just in the interest of time, we may. So, the interest of time, of course, entrepreneurship, Zoom level, ownership, and ability to have all that whole circle that you see, have skills in all those areas. That's what I'd say.
Okay,
I agree.
Okay, so with
Ditto.
Yeah. So with that consensus, we'll open the floor for questions. If anyone's got. Yeah.
Data science as a today is like an most abused word already. So everybody will blame themselves as data scientists. But when you pick your candidates, what are the things you consider critical, and how do you pick the name from the haystack?
So I haven't hired data scientists per se in the product function. We have a separate data science function. I think basis corridor conversations, again, please keep this discounted for what it's worth. Practicing data scientists have a roster of 5 or 6 questions they ask. You ask the candidate that, and you can end the interview in 5 minutes. It's as simple as that. Practicing data scientists, 5 questions, not more. And it's a very specific thing. Logistic regression, how will you do XYZ? How will you solve for this problem in logistic regression? When you get down to that specific, you can wrap up the interview in 5 minutes. If the person has given you credible answers, is where the conversation really starts. So that's what I've heard anecdotally from them. I haven't hired data scientists, so I'm not a good person to comment on it. But it's embarrassing how shammy. Suddenly, it's and just to induce some humor, Excel macros is now being positioned as data science. That's how cheesy it's become. So.
Yeah. Any more questions?
How big is the data scientist or the data in India at least? Because we are hearing that it is coming, it will come, but how we are not really into the industry and see how big is the size of the industry at this point of time. Maybe 5 years down the line it becomes the A to Z, but right now we are.
I think
I would say it is the need of our, for any need, to make yourself your product or anything, right? You need data science and you need to do all the analysis to see how can you personalize. And so data science is the need for that, and I think every industry and the vertical are going for it.
Yeah, but on January 19th,
yes.
What is the scenario in the world?
Okay, so I'll just throw some light on that. See, it so happens that it depends upon the industry vertical. So, for example, if you say industrial, right, you have already a lot of assets. Downtime is very expensive in industrial assets. So, and that's one place where you already have data. I think you got what I'm saying, right? So, when you want to apply data science, you first need the data. So, you have a history of data somewhere. So, that is where you are actually seeing some traction. Industrial segment, automation and all that. Where there is downtime, you can actually monitor your assets. That's one thing. The other thing is healthcare, where depends. I mean, it's not regulated, but there is some data in terms of the existing ailments. So there is some thought in how to use that data to be able to deliver newer products in the healthcare segment. So I think the premise is, do you have the data? If you don't have the data, then you start putting the data, things in place to get the data. So that is how I see it. Or maybe retail is another place where you have some data.
Sure.
Like you said, it's the need of the hour, but we have the data, like the financial
Yes.
industries, for example, have been hit by regulations left, right, center,
Yes.
right from 2008,
Right.
after Lehman Brothers. So financial industries, you will rightly agree, banking and finance have been hit left, right, center.
True.
And we have to cope up and come up with the right data. We should not do a plan here. We should have a complete 360. In automobile industry and healthcare industry, if we have to move from petrol and diesel vehicles to electronic vehicles, who are your customers? How big is the market? What is it? What represents? That data is there and it needs to be churned out for them to make right business decisions. It wouldn't make sense you bring a $1 million car in India and try to sell it, where something like a Ray-Ban ever did well in India at about 2 lakhs per car, right? So yes, it is nascent and it will keep growing at least for the next 10 to 15 years.
Yeah.
Beyond that, the way technology is changing, in future we will have to look for different kind of aspects and different learning and new learning altogether. But currently, at least for the next 10 15 years, in all industries across the world, it is required. Or somebody here from oil and natural gas.
Yeah, exactly.
Are significantly working for moving from petrol and diesel to hydroelectric vehicles. There is already
Hydrogen. Fuel cell.
Vehicle being built in Japan, I think by Shell, if I'm not mistaken, which is already doing the testing, and they need the data, right?
If I could just, apologies for butting in, sorry. If you could give me 10 practicing data scientists today in this room who can clear that interview process, I can roll out offers at the end of the day. That's how badly we need them. It needs a trip to China to realize how backward we are in terms of applications of data science and machine learning. It is jaw-dropping, stunning. And in fact, at a macro meta India point, I think we're missing the bus or whatever as far as data science goes. So if your question was, is there potential for the practicing data scientist who's handled and comfortable with writing, running TensorFlow workflows, knows what models, what weights, which data science algorithm or machine learning algorithm to use in which context? I'm telling you, right? I mean, I will call my HR person and say, 10 people, they've crossed the rounds, we need to roll out offers today. That's how bad it is.
So, I mean, I'll close that question with what, yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, Romil, that in the insurance industry, are you making any product which is specific to data?
So, if you look at that, and that's what I was looking at, in our company and insurance banking, everyone, even in the vertical, but in our company specifically, we make a slight distinction between data scientists, the practicing data scientists, those who write the algorithms, choose the algorithms, can code stuff, right? TensorFlow, like you said, and so on. And the distinction between that lot of people and the lot that actually figures out what to do with it and how to embed that in our products and how insurance can become better because of what. So the use cases and how to put AI to use and data science to use is actually another big emerging area, and we see a big shortage of that. Like he said, I mean, data scientists by themselves are in short supply. But even if I had for us, and specifically I'm seeing this for our insurance clients and banks, they all hire data scientists and probably they've gone through the rounds, but I think what to do with that is still emerging. So there's a big gap and there's a big sort of opportunity area there.
Just to add, I think people get enamored by algorithms and stuff like that. 75-80% of time spent by data scientists, even at our firm, is just cleaning up that goddamn data.
Okay, so one last question from...
More fundamental to product management and how product organizations are set up. I guess each company looks at it in a different way. Product innovation, product marketing, product engineering, product management. In many organizations, there are separate practices, separate tools. And even if you look at the flavor of people in each of these groups, they will have a different kind of mind skill set. So, this point earlier, for a platform, you need a tech kind of guy for product managing a platform. So, I mean, how do you go about in terms of, do you pick and choose people who have this specific bent of mind for a specific phase of the product that you are hiring, or you look for a guy who is kind of has a broad experience, who is more like a general management guy, a CEO for the product, who can probably traverse across, who has a tech background, who knows how to take it to the market, and who can probably run a business plan.
Shall I?
How do you do?
Yeah. So as I was mentioning the T and the pie, right? So if you look at it, it's no longer a organization which is 2D. I mean, it's no longer a career ladder kind of a thing. Okay. So it's already matrix model and it's 3D because you need those kind of skills and you will not find them in one person. Okay. And it's how you pick your resources. So if you look at it like a 3D matrix, there's one guy who has a knowledge of the industry vertical, there's one guy who has knowledge of the functional competencies, whatever we are talking about, and there's another guy who's the product manager of the product lifecycle. Okay, so I think when you observe that the product manager cannot have all the skills, at least he should have the knowledge of how to interface with those things. So that is where the product manager comes through. And in fact, within our organization, we're trying to do that. We're trying to identify people who have some one critical skill which others don't have. Okay, anchor around that and try to build those other skills. That's exactly how to go about it.
Someone for a long time.
Hi, yeah, this is Sandeep here. I have, two questions. One is a general question. Other one is, since the panelists is all from, e-commerce and advertising space, I just want to ask with them. Right, the first one is, how you guys are competing the monopoly with the industry? Since, the businesses are becoming monopoly, the tech giants are, becoming monopoly. How you guys as a mid-level business and small-level business, how you guys are competing with them in terms of technology? And other thing is, in terms of e-commerce, since the panelists are from e-commerce and advertising phase, so e-commerce, if you say there is a big riot between Walmart and Flipkart, that is what happening in India. The other thing is, in terms of advertising space, the social media giants like, Facebook, they took up the entire thing, wherein like big companies like WPP, they are also facing the heat there. So how, as a mid-level companies, how you guys are, competing with, technological changes and the shift changes that is happening with the global corporations, mainly with the BAT and the FANG companies, the Baidu, Amazon, Tencent, and then the Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, and Google. I just want to ask them generally.
No matter the size of the company, every company has chinks in its armor, no matter the size. Big company, small company, medium size. I don't have an algorithm. You should have a very clear sense of what are the chinks in your competitor's armor. You have a strategy that provides you a line of sight into how you're going to compete. You execute. You will get battered and bruised at the end of the day. You will win 2 out of the 10 battles. You get some rest, wake up next day and go for that battle again. It's as simple as that. And to give you a more credible answer, Facebook, Google, it doesn't get more monopolistic than that, at least in the advertising industry. There are markets where we are winning against Google. There are markets, not a lot of them, not in the market that we would like. And we don't have a consumer presence, so we know our limitations. So you develop a strategy. For example, in the next 12 months, you'll see a massive consumer play from our firm. Which is not a direct consumer play. We will never develop email or search, or we don't have those skills, right? So you figure out flanking strategies, you get that consumer play, and then once you have consumer play at a decent scale and size, advertising business is big enough. It's not winner take all. It's winner take a lot, but it's not winner take all. So you go, and it's about having reasonable expectations, right? I mean, if we can land at 10 billion, 15 billion, 20 billion in enterprise value as against Google's 800 billion, we still believe that's a great place to be.
Okay, so one last question. I think there's been someone there from a very long time. So that will be the last question, and the members will be around for a few minutes or maybe 5-10 minutes for you to address specific questions. So, yeah. Can you? We couldn't hear you.
And the product management be vertical agnostic?
Yes, it is. Actually, it is supposed to be vertical agnostic. That is what I said. Industry vertical and you look at the functions. The product lifecycle management is actually the third dimension in that. If you follow those concepts and frameworks, it is ideally it is agnostic. But it would, depending upon the product, as you said, platform approach. If you want to follow a platform approach, if it helps if you have the technology background. But the focus is on the user, the experience that you bring to the user, the value that you put into the product to be able to deliver that. So it goes with the product as well, but typically it should be agnostic. If it answers your question.
If I could just add a data point, while you asked that question and while he was responding, I was trying to process how many of my product team members are from advertising, and I think it is 5%. So roughly 95% of them, you have ex-investment bankers, you have ex-entrepreneurs who are doing education software and all of that stuff. So
you have to look at it this way. We've never had as many product managers, or rather that many products specific to India. So I think the skills that come from the other two dimensions are very critical for you to become a product manager. So I think I would close this session. I think thanks to the members of the panel. for all those great insights, and thanks for your time. Yeah.
Thanks.